All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Beyond the Resume with my guest, Jay France. Again, the reason why we do this live is because life is live and unedited. And as leaders, we make mistakes. Quite frankly, Jay and I might stumble through half of this, but that's how life is, and life is real and raw. And so we're looking forward to talking today. Let us know in the comment section where you're coming from. If you have any questions for Jay, let us know what questions you may have. And Jay, let's get right into it. Welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, thank you so much, Scott. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for our continued connection and friendship over the years, and thanks to your listeners and everybody who's watching for tuning in to what I know will be a good time, a good conversation.
Yes, sir. I think this will be slightly more entertaining than Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul, which I ended up punching myself for watching that. That was a catastrophe. And God bless America, where you can make 20 or 40 million for something like that. So anyway, hey, so I know you well, but not everyone does, Jay. And so you're not just an airman, a retired chief master sergeant, a retired command chief who served at the highest level of a combatant command. One that I have often said is the most important combatant command we have, for what it's worth. But you're also a husband, a father, a mentor, a coach, and an author. And so, my goodness, Jay, I don't know how you pack all of that in. I don't know how we're going to pack all of this in to 1 hour. But let's start with tell us about Jay, and you can take that wherever you want. Tell us about you.
Yeah, so I'm a proud husband, father, and still an airman. My wife and I have been together coming up on 25 years, and married for almost 23 of that. And yeah, we have two incredible kiddos. Oh, my wife is also a retired airman. She served in the United States Air Force for 21 years. And yeah, the Air Force brought us together, and we came out the back end with a family, an incredible family. So we have two sons. We have a 19-year-old who is a sophomore at Mizzou, pursuing his computer science degree. And then we have our 15-year-old who's in ninth grade here in Muscoda, Illinois. And yeah, they're my pride and joy. I measure my wealth by the time I get to spend with them. So yeah, great.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a great quote there. How you measure your wealth, and in many ways, I agree with you too, because success is defined differently for everyone, and not everyone has a family for a variety of reasons, choice or whatever. But success, at the end of the day, is what you have right now on your face is a nice smile. Are you happy? Do you wake up happy? Do you wake up with opportunities and goals? And I just want to really dive into this because your career is incredible, and this hour will go quickly. So, not only a distinguished Air Force career, and we're going to get to the book and what the story is of that, and there's multiple stories in it. But you went to Ranger School, Jay, and airmen don't go. I thought it was the Chair Force. That's what I heard. It was soft and easy. What's that about, Jay? Why would you go do something so insane as Ranger School?
Yeah, the truth is I got on the wrong bus, and I thought it said 4 seasons, but we showed up at Fort Benning, Georgia. No, it started. I've had a great opportunity to work with folks from all services, and I was stationed down in Panama, and got the opportunity to go to the Army's Jungle Warfare School when it was down there, and saw two leaders that really stood out to me. And what was different about them? I noticed that Ranger tab, and found out that Air Force, we were allowed to go at the time. Air Force was allowed 6 slots per year. As the Marine Corps, I'm not sure how many slots they're authorized to, but there were 3 Marines that started with me in my class. But yeah, went to our selection course, and 6 years after asking to go, I was standing at Fort Benning, Georgia, and yeah, showed up as the only airman, and graduated with 3 as folks cycled into our class as we went along. And yeah, one of my Marine buddies, we were back to back the whole entire time. And what a great opportunity that later turned into to other opportunities, especially in the Joint Force.
Yeah, and I imagine, and we'll transition to that piece, some of the mental toughness and, lack of food and all those things. Although in your book, although I'm pivoting now. Your book, you talk about a moment where, a long moment where, the $20 for lunch and what your, when your mother found out you didn't have some cash. So maybe that was a precept for Ranger School. You were always already used to not eating and living
Yeah.
on food. So good on you there, Jay. I first met you as you replaced just one of the greatest men and people I met in my life, and Matt Caruso. And if Matt's listening, God bless him, and I hope he's doing okay.
Yeah.
I love that guy. But you then you move up into the combatant command level, and there's 11 of those combatant commands. You're now in the joint world, and everyone relies on transportation command for a variety of things. No matter what, you're tied into transportation command. And as I've said before, if we're going to get to the fight, it's because transportation command is going to be doing their job and doing it exceptionally well. But I saw you. We would spend time in these conferences called the Defense Senior Enlisted Leader Council, right? And I remember listening to you as you would be in there, and we would have, this was a big time meeting, right? The Secretary of Defense would visit us, and the DepSecDef and others. What was that like for you, coming from, an Air Force organization, although a very senior unit, and then transitioning up, because we're going to get into the transition out in a moment, but now you're there with in many ways the big dogs. And what was that like for you? Was there a moment of doubt that you ever had as you got into that seat? And then next thing you know, you're in the room with the Secretary of Defense and other senior leaders.
Yeah, I think I was fortunate to have opportunities throughout my career, Scott, deploying as a young airman and a young NCO, to getting some of those developmental experiences, being on the receiving end and of the business of transportation command. As a non-commissioned officer in the Air Force, being a part of Air Mobility Command, of course, the Air Force component of Transcom, and then being in the joint world, I had the privilege to serve 3 years in Joint Special Operations Command down at Fort Bragg, and saw how incredibly important that transportation and logistics piece is, especially for trying to move things very quickly. And wow, those developmental experiences over time allowed me the development to feel confident in stepping into that role. So I bring it all the way back to being an airman and then deploying 10 times over my career, and seeing that machine, seeing it operate from a deployer and a user perspective, definitely set me up for success, and gain that, allowed that perspective to hopefully help some folks out and make some good decisions while I was in the seat as the C-cell up there.
So you finish up your role there successfully, 31 years. That's what I got. So, we did 31 together. And in many ways, we kind of ended close to the end together. And you then go to transition. Walk us through your retirement process, both, and you would think someone who's doing a transportation command, everything's going to be a golden ticket. I imagine it wasn't. So what were some of the good things, but some of the challenges you faced? Because my audience predominantly are those that are in and going to transition, or veterans as well. So what were some challenges you faced as you transitioned out, Jay?
Yeah, I think some of the biggest challenges were, I was at the tail end of COVID, coming out. So we were just getting back to, I can't call it normal, but just getting back to an area where we could do face-to-face interactions with folks. But I will tell you, the planning and the time that I put into it was helpful in making a successful transition. So I did everything from the start at the first possible time, everything in the process. First day I was able to do something on a suspense, I was making that happen. I was also making time for myself to allow these things to happen. Oftentimes we see folks going hard right up until the end, and there's a lot of honor in that, and I understand that, but there was a bit of a balance and some pretty tough decisions I had to make to give myself the time I needed to successfully transition and set my successor up for success.
Yeah. And I've said before, that story is different for all of us. I think you can both transition and do your job at the same time, but you're right. At a certain point, you do have to step aside and let that other person in and learn and struggle and learn these new acronyms and battle rhythm and all sorts of things. And probably as well quickly realize that some of their schedule isn't theirs. They're going to be, traveling around a lot to different places, meeting with other service components and other people. Those of us, when the SEAC would call or whatever. But I will tell you, man, I really loved the crew that we had. And I loved, I've told Phil Easton this one time, I love the fact that we were in a meeting one time and hearing him disagree with a very senior person, professionally done as Phil always would do.
Yeah.
But, guys like you and others, I thought we had just a phenomenal crew. And we always knew that it was a privilege to be there, but we were there to make sure we were looking out for the junior enlisted and officer, our junior service members, and looking out for them. So that was an honor.
It was.
So you transitioned. Go ahead. Sorry.
No. I was saying it's an absolute honor. We had such an incredible crew.
Yeah, it really was. All right, so you retire now, and you mentioned this in the book, the stress and everything, and I want to quote something if I can from the book. I'm not Jocko Willnek. I'm not doing story hour, and I love that. I certainly wouldn't make fun of Jocko here, but in your book here on the opening chapter, page 10, you say, I have always understood and agreed that the formality of senior leadership positions, the customs and courtesies, traditions, and protocol are essential parts of a hierarchical structure like the military. And I appreciated the trust, admiration, and respect I earned through my actions. The close connections I made and maintained with people throughout my career were the most personally fulfilling and valuable aspects of being in the Air Force. I was proud to be a part of my people's lives and proud they were a part of mine. But the further I went, the fewer people there were who actually knew me on a personal level. I became only chief in the eyes of many I had served with, but there was so much more to me than the rank, title, or position. Jay France, the proud husband and father who had passions and interests outside of his military profession, wasn't as important anymore, even though those were the things that made me the chief I was. Talk about that for a moment, because that punched me in the face with literary genius. That was really, really powerful. And I felt the same way for 7 years of some of the jobs I had as well.
I appreciate you bringing that up, brother. And I'm glad we were able to connect through that experience. I mean, at the end, just a small circle of folks. As the formations got larger, and mathematically we couldn't be in the face of our folks, and realistically, sometimes it was the job of someone else to be that person that they go to. But those experiences in sharing a period of time in someone's life, in being there for them during the hard times and the good times, to see the families that are just starting, to help them through a tough period in life. Those were the things that I appreciated and loved the most. And towards the end, it almost seemed at times as if it were transactional. Now, you and I had duties as C-cells and things that we had to do. And I know that you appreciated, just as I did, the things that we were able to do for people when oftentimes we were the only enlisted voice in a room of some very senior officers and very senior civilians across the DoD. And that's a privilege, but those personal connections were just fewer and far between. And I was excited and proud of my career, but I was really excited to just be Jay, to just step away from that and, be my true self and connect with others in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really touched me a lot, man. The whole book did, but that really did as well. I want to rewind for a moment and then get back into this because we were just talking about retirement as well. And there's kind of like three things people are told you have to focus on when you retire, right? Where do you want to live? How much do you want to make? And what job do you want to do? How did you go through that? Because, I don't want to spoiler alert, but you go for a long walk. Let's just say that as we dive into the book. So how did you look through the lens of where do you want to live? And I know we just talked a moment ago, but that was offline. What did you want to do, and so on and so forth? Walk us through that.
Yeah. So I was privileged my wife retired about 1.5 years before I did. So I got to take notes and watch her journey. Her and I, because we are a military family with those 2 young sons, we committed to our sons after doing a whole lot of moves to allow them their high school years in the same place. So we chose to stay here. she went directly into, she's a substitute teacher for the school district where our younger son still goes. Um, I, on the other hand, had the opportunity um, to work on the professional development front through the same company that we work for Flatter. Had that lined up before, and yeah, fortunately, had the opportunity and time to take what I thought was going to be 6 months, turned out to be 5, to step away and think and make good decisions and reflect and really think about what it is that I wanted to do post retirement. And that turned out to be a hike of the Pacific Crest Trail.
Yeah. Now, as I what I pulled out of the book, though, and correct me if I'm wrong, is this wasn't something you thought of your last week as the CSIL
No,
Transcom. This was a childhood dream. This was something
indeed
you
it
had
was.
thought about as a young boy from Washington. So, where does that come from? Because, I have done some rucks before. I had the honor of doing a long one over 50 miles in Scotland, but
Mhm.
that wasn't for 5 months, right? Because
Yeah.
I'm still saying, Jay, you're crazy. That's crazy, man. What are you doing? Right. And then, oh, by the way, and I'm going to talk about this here soon too. We had lunch as I was getting ready to retire. And then you
Mhm.
went on another long hike, and we'll talk about that. But what
Yeah.
what drew you to the Pacific Coast Crest Trail, and how do you think that helped you with your transition?
Oh, yeah. So a lot of directions we can go with that one, brother. So, childhood dream. I grew up north of Washington. It's a place called Whidbey Island, and a beautiful place. And having a rough childhood, I'll tell you, the woods and the outdoors were a place that I would go where I could feel safe and get away from it all and just be alone. And that to me, it was my spirituality. I always have had that strong, deep connection with the PCT. Well, when I was, or with the outdoors, when I was 8, there was a National Geographic magazine at my grandmother's house. And I looked at that and it featured the Pacific Crest Trail. She was a very important person in my life, and we connected or sat down and we read that together. And she's like, "Hey, you ought to do this someday." So she literally, got me thinking about that, planted the seed when I was 8 years old. And then over time, just kept thinking about that Pacific Crest Trail hike. A documentary came out, I believe, in 2010. My wife and I sat down and watched that, and she's like, "Hey, that's the one you're always talking about. You ought to do that someday." Well, fast forward about 10 years after that, and it was time to get to the business. And wow, the transformation piece out there, walking away. So I retired. My ceremony was on the 1st of April. I turned 50 the week following, and then the following week I started the trail. And I felt a little guilty about that. I did the math before stepping up on stage. My wife and I, because of we had both deployed and all of our military commitments and schools and TDYs, we had been apart for 8 years of our relationship.
Wow. Wow.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
And I felt a little bit guilty about it. So what I was going to compromise or do to compromise was hike the 508 miles section in Washington to finish in my home state. I told her about that, and she essentially called me out. She's like, "Man up, why aren't you going to do the whole thing?" So, reason 7,327 why I love her. But yeah, my family was incredible in supporting me and encouraging me, being the logistics from home. It was great. So I got out there, went after it, and had the opportunity to think and reflect, slow down, disconnect, let my mind go where it wanted to, and yeah, for 5 months, get up and walk every morning. And it was so awesome in so many ways.
You know, let me grab that right there. That was powerful. Think, slow down, reconnect,
Yeah.
take a step, like just moving forward.
Hmm.
I didn't say it as eloquently. I've told people in retirement what the next day after my ceremony, I woke up, I go outside, the sun felt a little warmer and
Yeah.
brighter, and the grass smelled a little greener. There's something about it. And of all of the stories I've ever heard in transition, yours is the one I envy and admire the most, because it's quite frankly what I would love to do. Now, I too have a supportive wife, but with very young girls, I don't think it's
Mhm.
realistic right now. But I'll offer to anyone out there that's looking about what they want to do, when they retire, transition, whatever. Try to take some time. Maybe it's not 5 months, maybe it's longer than 5 months, but take some time for you to transition, to mentally decompress, and to go over everything. And you talk about this in the book too. You talk about how if the news is not something, it's all negative, turn it off. You in many ways just said, I'm just going to go where all this noise isn't.
Yes.
And some may say, hey, you were escaping, whatever. I think it's brilliant. And you may know General Jeff Buchanan, Lieutenant General, retired in the Army. He'd said something to me a long time ago, when we were going through a Keystone. He had said, Scott, you're just not going to realize how tired you are, how heavy your load is. And he was right. And there's moments of exhaustion for no reason at all, even still occasionally, and you and I, we're not the Netflix and chill type of guys, running and gunning. And so I wanted to touch on this area of mental health, which is an element of total wellness here, as you talk about in your book here, if I may briefly. All of it came at a cost, though. It cost to me physically, mentally, and emotional, and my well-being. I had given everything I had to the military and the people I served with, and I was exhausted when I walked off that stage. I was burned out and stressed. My anxiety was high. I was constantly fatigued. I wasn't getting quality sleep. I had difficulty staying focused. I wasn't eating as well as I should have been. I wasn't prioritizing fitness as much as I should. One of my main leadership talking points for years was the importance of self-care. But honestly, I was doing a terrible job of taking care of myself. I had put others first for so many years that I had forgotten the importance of caring for myself. Jay, I don't know about others, but I can say that resonated with me as well. And I think you doing the PCT was putting yourself first for the first time in maybe 30 something years. Talk to me about that chapter that I just briefly read.
Indeed it was, brother. And, I'll tell you, I didn't fully realize it, the impacts and the things that I described in that chapter there until stepping away. And as I progressed along the trail, it took a while for these things for them to really, really stand out to me. At first, I felt that I was missing something. I was having phantom notifications for devices I didn't even have. I felt that I was late for something. I felt that I needed to respond to something. I felt that I was missing out a little bit. And wow, it took a while for that. Like I describe in there, the quiet was very loud for me at first because those thoughts and everything were still going through my mind. I started to notice the physical improvements and then the sleep improvements. And then that clarity and all those other things started to come back, but not without challenges. You brought up a word there, and I understand why, that escape piece. Well, I got to tell you, when you are out there alone and you have the opportunity, and this was the first time in my life that I had the opportunity to let my thoughts play out without distraction, there was no escape from the thoughts as well. Yes, I was away from those distractions and those things in our daily life that often beg for our attention and sometimes consume us. But wow, once those thoughts go out and you don't have anything to distract you, those things that you might not want to think about, but when you're out there alone, that sometimes you have to face. There was some tough moments out there, but going through those things linearly and figuratively, going straight through stuff when you have nothing to distract you and no escape was very, very beneficial on some things that I had not achieved closure on through life and military experiences. But a great question. Thanks for bringing that up, Scott.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And you're retired chief. You've got a lot of accolades and whatnot. When did you make the decision to become an author, to write the book? Did you think about this before you even wanted to do the PCT? When did this idea resonate with you? And then so maybe some folks that are certainly Todd Simmons just chimed in, and many others have written books or thought about written books.
Mhm.
But how did tell us, if you're a veteran or if you're just listening and maybe you're not even a veteran, about writing a book. How was that process as well?
Yeah, so it comes down to connection. And so many people seemed interested in the story. Um, and so many people had said, "Hey, Jay, you ought to write a book." And I really didn't, take it all that seriously. But then I started to reflect on, and there was one experience on the trail that really started it. There was a woman who I did a YouTube channel and I had vlogged this
Yeah.
entire journey. And there was a lady early on that had left a comment and asked if she could speak with me. And I was a little hesitant at first, but I used a Google Voice number, so it wasn't mine. And she's like, "Hey, I just really need to express my gratitude for what it is that you're doing." She's like, "My father is in his 80s. He is terminally ill with cancer, and he used to hike."
Wow.
And she believed that her visits with him and him watching the videos, bringing him back to a point in his life that he really enjoyed hiking, she believed that those were some of the things that were keeping him alive. And then the connections and the people that I met along the trail, sharing my story, them sharing their stories with me, um, all of these thoughts, kind of spun around, and I wanted to share it. So the process that you asked about,
Yeah.
if we want to call it a process, it started with a brainstorm. And it's like, okay, what were the experiences, my most memorable experiences on the trail? Then it turned into, how did those experiences tie into a life experience and the so what behind it? So I really didn't have, I didn't know what I was doing, to be honest. I didn't have a page count, I didn't have a chapter count at the end. It started with a brainstorm. That brainstorm turned into ideas, turned into 17 chapters that are essentially all over the place, but they are an experience on the trail, a life experience, and kind of what I learned from it. And I'll tell you, Scott, the things that I was most hesitant to share in there, because there are things in the book that I've never said out loud
Yeah.
before writing that. There are things that I had never told my family. Not that I was hiding anything from them, but I felt in some cases I was protecting them from the burden of some of my experiences. But those things that I was hesitant to share, Scott, are the things through the feedback and people sharing with me their experiences. Those are the things that are resonating the most. Are the ones that I, kind of felt a little nervous about sharing, to be honest with you. But yeah,
Yeah.
just turned into a book.
Well, it's an incredible book. Again, we're talking about Jay France's book, newly released, 5 Million Steps. It's an incredible book. Highly recommend you go pick it up, and we'll talk about the process of doing that here before we end. But Jay, you weren't done with the PCT, right?
Mhm.
You truly are someone we got to check out, man. You're crazy. You said let's do some more, and so when I was out in Colorado Springs, we grabbed the bike together.
Yeah.
And we had a little chat and caught up on some things, and your book wasn't out yet. And you were getting ready to do something else.
Mhm.
Tell us about that moment and maybe share a story from that hike as well.
Yeah. So I did the PCT in 2021. Uh, and then that's 2,653 miles. And the journey wasn't done. I felt the urge to go back out there. So in 2022, I hiked it's about 500 miles, the Colorado Trail that extends from Denver to Durango, and another incredible, very different, but another incredible experience to go out there, face different challenges, meet different people, and be out there in nature and have that time to think and disconnect and do all of those things that I just love doing when I'm out there hiking.
Yeah, and I have to imagine, having lived out there for 3 years, my old boss, General Jim Dickinson, would always say,
Mhm.
if you've been in Colorado for 24 hours, you likely experienced all 4 seasons in one day. But not only that, right? So as an intel professional, we always talk
Mhm.
about wet, and I've added to
Oof.
wet in terms of weather, enemy, terrain, and I also think you got to understand the leader of the nation as well, the
Mhm.
character. But you were dealing with elevation and terrain. And
Yeah.
so, how was that as someone who is not so much native to Colorado,
Mhm.
but now you're up at high altitude? How did any challenges there?
Yeah, very different experiences out there. So I went out, I think it was 3 days early to acclimate a little bit. I live in Muscuda, Illinois, right outside the back gate of Scott Air Force Base. And we're right around 300 feet of elevation. And a lot of the Colorado Trail is, 11 to 13,000 feet.
Yeah,
And yeah, so I went out there for a few days and then I just took a slow approach to it,
yeah,
being very mindful of hydration, being very mindful of, how I'm feeling. And when I'm out there by myself, I'm only competing with myself essentially. So typically on these longer hikes, I'll take a slow start. Then once I get my feet under me, then I'll pick it up a little bit. But you brought up weather. Wow. I did the Colorado Trail in August. I was trying to get past the typical monsoonal activity that usually
yeah,
occurs in July there. And I was on the trail for 27 days and I got absolutely blasted with rain for 15 days of that.
yeah.
So it wasn't quite the experience that I was hoping for, but it was still absolutely incredible because on that trail and every single other hiking experience I've had, those hard times, those times when you might be struggling, those times when you might be doubting yourself, those times when you might want to stop. Every single time in my experience, there's a reason for that I'm waking up to an amazing sunrise. I'm seeing some nature that people hardly ever see, a bear, a moose, something like that.
Yeah.
I fly fish while I'm out there, catching some awesome trout, something like that. I'm rewarded every single time for a difficult time on the trail.
You're rewarded in many ways, I imagine. And to me, I just love hearing these stories. They're remarkable, the challenges, and you said something about tough times. Tough times create tough men, tough women,
Mhm.
whatever. But there's something we often talked about, and you and I were in a lot of these meetings. We talked about resilience.
Yeah.
Really hard to be resilient and tough in a nice office. And
Mhm.
and I think the things you did are going to pay dividends tomorrow and 10, 15 years from now. And so it's remarkable that you did that. Now, but I want to talk about something else towards,
Mhm.
matter of fact, at the end of your book, you get into this point of now what's
Yeah.
next. So, I want to read this piece and then I'm going to ask you, what's next for Jay, right? Are you just going to walk around the earth? What's next? Maybe you'll be the first guy to, you'll go with Elon and go to space and, hike something in Mars or something, knowing you.
Yeah. I got a
Um,
point on that when we're done here.
okay. Okay. So a little bit more of tolerating Scott Stalker's story hour.
No?
All right. So now what is the point here? And he says, it started with the small things. Too much negativity in the news. That never happens, Jay.
No.
Turn it off. Don't like what I'm seeing on social media. Change what I'm looking at and who I'm connected with. Missing the trail. Get outside. Thinking about someone I haven't talked to in a while. Reach out to them. Progress on the small things led to progress on the bigger things. The biggest now what question I had to answer was what my new career path would be. After spending over 3 decades in the Air Force with a great deal of that time away from my family, my priority was being able to spend more time with them. I also needed a career that would fuel my passion for connecting with people and helping people, giving me a sense of purpose and providing the fulfillment I enjoyed during my Air Force career. Those desires led me to become an executive coach, an adjunct professor, and a leadership development trainer. Each path has allowed me to share my experiences from my Air Force career and my PCT journey to help others grow. So, that right there, I could take that page, put it in taps and transition and say, read this and
Mhm.
think about this, and let's get back and have a conversation about that. That's what it's all about. It's really, what do you love to do? How do
Yeah.
you go about doing that? And then pursuing that with vigor. And I think you nailed it. I hope people, again, read this book here and listen to it. So let's talk about it, Jay.
Yeah.
We are now 11 days until Thanksgiving 2024. Now what? What's next for Jay France?
Yeah. So I've been exploring those passions. It started, of course, with the hike. Then it was, how do I now focus more on that time and that experience, or those experiences with my family, more time for my personal endeavors, hiking, of course. I hiked about a little over 4,000 miles since retiring. And then that focus on writing a book. Right now, I'm focusing on that, what's next in many areas. What I've appreciated probably the most about retired life is the flexibility to pick up and change those things. Fortunately, I have the privilege of, some of the things you talked about, being an executive coach, being an adjunct professor, teaching courses at Air University and for Air Force Global Strike Command. Love that interaction and sharing those experiences, and still getting to connect. Because Scott, I hope you enjoy this as well. It's so interesting, and one of the other things I love about the space that we work in now sometimes is when you strip away who we were, when we no longer carry those titles, we no longer carry those positions, we no longer have the influence that we once had, we no longer can influence in a positive or otherwise way someone's career. When all of those things we used to be are stripped away and people value us for who we are, what's in our heart, and what we can give to them, that feels really good. When all we have to give is ourselves is pretty awesome. So I'm focusing my what's next in those areas. There will be another adventure, an outdoor adventure coming up later this summer. But I am just happy to work with some folks and work for some folks that I share the same values with, and are great companies to work with and for. And then the clients I have on my personal business and the folks that I collaborate with and folks that I engage with, having that choice is it feels pretty good. So there is definitely quite a few reasons why I'm smiling right now.
Absolutely. And I hope,
Yeah.
whatever next you decide, you'll share with us, and we look forward to supporting you. So, if you see some
Absolutely.
straggly guy with a 5 o'clock shadow, or maybe a long beard or whatever, let's make sure we feed and water Jay Francis. He's hiking across America
Yeah.
and whatnot, and be a part of that story. You mentioned what you are doing, but there's also something else you have done. And
Mhm.
that's something that I want to explore, because others have come to me and said, "Hey, Scott, how do I start my own company, my own LLC?"
Yeah.
You're the CEO and founder of Elevate Leadership Solutions.
Mhm.
First off, what is that? And then second, how do you create an LLC? And maybe specific to how you did it there in your state, but how did you go about that? Why did you go about that? And tell us about Elevate Leadership Solutions.
Yeah. So I provide coaching, professional speaking, and professional development services. Um, it's an LLC of one. I started it to allow myself to pursue those passions, those things that we have talked about. Having the opportunity to pour into others, to help develop and inspire young leaders, is where I spend a lot of my time, and absolutely love it. Each state is different, so anybody listening that's considering pursuing that is going to have to go through that process. But I'm very, very glad that I did that, because of the opportunities it has allowed me to connect with people again, following that passion piece. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would tell anyone that's listening to, I've heard Jay speak a number of times, a lot of technical conversations we've had related to warfighting, but very gifted and articulate. And so make sure you reach out, and we'll talk about how to find
Mhm.
you here as we come towards the end. So, now you're out and about, and you reflect back on 31 years. I've got an
Mhm.
audience of folks that are either watching now or they'll listen to this later. Not so much regrets, but maybe much like I have said, I wish I got an MBA. I got a master's in cybersecurity, but now that I'm doing business, I think, man, that would have been nice to get an MBA as well. Not that I can't go get one, of course. But what are some things maybe through your transition you wish you knew then that you know now, or is there anything in service? If you can grab a young airman or joint service member and say, hey, here's something to think about. What are some things, 31 years, you got a lot in there. What would you tell those still in uniform today?
I would say invest early. Similar to what you brought up. I didn't start my education journey until later. I was really focused on having fun, doing cool guy stuff, jumping out of airplanes, shooting guns, having a good time. And I let about 12 years go by. I really didn't invest much in myself early. At very early in my career, um, was really trying to uh, wait for folks to reach out to me. I didn't understand the value of seeking mentorship. My role in followership, I'm not sure that I was a follower worth leading for many years at the beginning of my career. And I was kind of upset. I grew up as a canine handler and spent a lot of time on posts in places just, me and my dog. So I
Yeah.
really didn't have a lot of interaction through work. Well, I felt a certain way that I wasn't invested in for a while. Um, then I had the realization that, hey, I have responsibility in this. I need to seek mentorship, not wait for it to come to me. I need to seek opportunities, not wait for them to come to me. I need to make those. I need to be proactive in that. And once I got on board with that, I started, things started to happen. Opportunities came. Um, the mentorship came, which also allowed me to provide mentorship, to others that were, coming up behind me. But I really didn't get on board that quick. So I would say that piece of advice is invest in yourself early. And that you don't have to, that doesn't mean be greedy, but definitely invest in yourself early, especially on that education piece, because I started a little too late.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Whenever you can, and
Hmm.
even for some listeners that maybe say, now they're thinking they're too late. Um, you never are too late. You can start, and the world we're in today too. Education can mean a number of things. It can also mean certification. It doesn't necessarily have to be. And so as you're going through this transition process, once you identify what you want to do, then it's an opportunity to find people that are doing that and see what they have, whether that's a doctorate degree,
Hmm.
a high school diploma and certifications, a hybrid of those. But then going after that and pursuing it. And that's why I say, I always knew that I was going to do this on my own.
Hmm.
On my own, I say in terms of my own business, just because I prefer to work that way. But I should have thought about getting the MBA, and that's something that it's not a major regret. I'm doing fine, but
Hmm.
I've stumbled along the way to figure things out in terms of especially accounting and what dollars what. As I've got an LLC, and then underneath that S corp for tax purposes and simplicity. So you're now a crusty veteran, Jay. Been retired a little bit of time.
Hmm.
Um, those that are listening that are getting ready to take the uniform off, what should they expect? And they may not have the 5 months to go for a nice hike, but what should they expect? And then what would you recommend they do if they don't have 5 months to take off?
Yeah, what to expect is, of course, a lot of change. For things to slow down a lot because the pace in which things move on the outside is probably going to be different than it was. Going back to our earlier discussion on the positions that you once held, you are no longer that person. And, I encourage everyone to put some thought into what you want to do when you move forward, when you separate or retire or transition. How much is enough? Enough work, enough money, enough time invested, what your boundaries are going to be, what you are willing to do, what you are not willing to do to achieve the success that you and you alone define.
Yeah,
Define. To be very cautious of comparing yourself to others. Someone else's joy, someone else's view of success is probably going to be different than yours. And trying to chase someone else's is robbing you of your own joy and your own success. And then I think the last thing I would, that came to mind when you brought that up is it's okay to change your mind. We get really used to
Right.
or at least I did during my time in the service, is making the mission happen at all costs. We're going to pour everything. We might not break away when we probably should have. We're going to continue to pour into this until we make it work. You don't always have to do that, especially when you step to the side. If you make a mistake or stumble along the way, learn from it, grow, adjust.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
It,
just a few
you,
thoughts that came to mind when you asked that question.
no, it's important. And again, that's why we do this live. I don't want to prep you with a bunch of questions. I
Yeah.
want this to be real. You mentioned something about comparisons.
Mm-hmm.
And I will tell you, it is an absolute thief of joy when you try to
Yeah.
compare yourself to others. Um, I have so many things that I want to do. I literally am working more now than I ever did
Mm-hmm.
out of pleasure, and I enjoy it based on some really long term goals that I have and some things that I'm trying to get done. Um, but I think if I were to then say, well, Jay's out, walking across California or something, I would sit and think what I'm doing is nothing instead of just being proud of the moments. And I think
Exactly.
what I learned, and it took a moment, and then I read a book about this as well, is you want to do a couple things. And I think one of them is making sure that your tribe is filled with
Mm-hmm.
positive people. Are they proud of your achievements? Do they support you? And do you equally support them? Right. And so that's critical there, because if you've got a lot of people in your tribe and they never are patting you on the back, or telling you congratulations or whatever, however they go about doing that, you might be in the wrong tribe. And then number
Mm-hmm.
two really is having these goals and aspirations out there. And then Kristen just quoted this perfectly, is what you said. And it's okay to change your mind, and a lot of reasons why. It could be for things you just weren't planning on. It could be a health condition. It could be a situation with a family member.
Mm-hmm.
It could be hey, we retired in Illinois where you're at, and we're just getting a little tired of this cold winter, right? As you're getting ready to hit. And you're seeing Scott Stalker out out here in the warm North Carolina with his pool or something, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, veterans and service members, as you get ready to transition and think about this, is you said, Jay, something that this is what I had that worked for me is I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew what I didn't want to do. And so knowing
Mm-hmm.
that is how I moved out on and started narrowing down and tighten my own shot group. So if you're getting ready to transition and you don't know exactly what you want to do, spend a moment or two thinking about what you don't want to do. And that was really important for me. How Jay, what, because I imagine there were a lot of people saying, hey, we can give you this job or that
Mm-hmm.
job. How did you navigate that? Right. Because
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, I had the conversations when someone wanted to sit and talk to me, or they wanted to have something and it was during working hours, I would take a day off to do that the right way. Because I felt like some of these conversations, and even though you and I didn't require an ethics letter, I asked my
Mm-hmm.
lawyer, and God bless him, he gave me an ethics letter saying that I can have these conversations and I can basically be employed right away. Unlike our flag and general officers who have some
Mm-hmm.
ethics things, and so they have to look at it differently, and they do a good job of that. So did you spend time saying this is what I want to do, or did you say I know what I don't want to do?
Yeah, interesting you brought that up too. I'm glad I got that ethics letter as well, not just for the piece of paper, but the thought process in going through that. And to your question, yes, a few opportunities were presented, um, and I needed that time to think, and I'm glad that I took that, because although I answered, with grace, although I love and appreciate those folks that I had those discussions with. I appreciated the opportunities. And I mean no ill intent by saying this, but those jobs would have robbed me of my soul. Absolutely no doubt. With that, and this isn't just about the money, but with that level of responsibility and those level of expectations, that level of pay is not what I was looking for, because again, I had defined those things that I wasn't willing to do and that I wasn't willing to give up. um, DC money, DC expectations. And I know you know what I'm talking about when I say that. Um,
Yeah.
Now, but I did feel a little strange about that because I was like, wow, I got asked by, this person, that person, one, they're interested. Two, wow, that's pretty good money right there. Am I thinking about this correctly? Because should I be looking at that income as what it's going to do with my family, even though that will come at a great cost
Yeah.
that I at that time was not willing to allow. So taking that time and stepping away allowed me to think, to reflect, to really know for certain that I made good decisions by passing on those opportunities. And other opportunities that I am more passionate about that I'm spending my time on now presented themselves. Interesting how the world works.
Yeah.
These are the things that I love to do, not that I have to do. And that's
Yeah.
where I spend my time now.
Yeah. A good friend of ours, celebrity chef Robert Irvine, coached me and told me to know your worth. And
Hmm.
I think that's so important. Money, I forget the movie. The movie Blow with Johnny Depp. I love that movie.
Hmm.
And there's a moment where his father says, "Money isn't real, George." And I get it. It's easy to say when you're in certain positions, but there are levels of things you've got to be able to understand when certain dollars are thrown at you. And I have had an outrageous amount thrown at me,
Hmm.
but there's other things that matter more, and
Yeah.
that's what you have to, and they're different for each person, right?
Yeah.
Um, but you know, six figures, $100,000 in Washington D.C. is quickly gone. When you start talking rent, fuel, blah blah blah. I
Yeah.
mean, that's taxes. It's gone in a moment, and so you have to understand all of those things and measure and balance those as well. So Jay, we're running towards the end. I had promised folks that I was going to have a big surprise, and I didn't even want you to know about it as well. So every year, whether people care or not, I put together a reading list. I do a reading list. I've been doing this since I was in uniform. And then people started asking me, hey, what are you reading, Scott? And so I just started building out a reading list. And so the day after Thanksgiving, I will release my 2025 reading list. I do that the day after Thanksgiving because that's a day, Black Friday, people go shopping and they lose their minds and they knock old women down as they charge in a Walmart at midnight for whatever reason. If you remember those videos, I don't recommend that, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. But the greatest gift we can give one another is wisdom. It's knowledge. It is not a cheap toy or any of this other garbage out there. I don't need another pair of socks, whatnot. But Jay, this book here, this one touched me so much. It really, I felt like you wrote this and said, Scott, this is for you, and you did autograph it. That was nice of you to do. But your book is going to be a sneak preview here. Your book is on my 2025 reading list. It's just powerful, and I could tell you, I don't put books on there just to put books on there. I have to have read them. They have to resonate with me, and they have to speak to a number of different topics that I think are powerful, and that if I'm going to put my name on it, that means something to me. So Jay, for what it's worth, congrats for being on my 2025 reading list, 5 million steps. And tell us and take us home here as we got about 7 minutes left.
Yeah, brother. I will tell you, man, I hard for me to put in words how much I appreciate that. I have been, watching your reading list for a number of years. I know that the influence you have and the example you set in the way you live your life as a Marine, as a leader, as a husband, and as a father, people resonate with your message, and I appreciate you considering my book and throwing it on there, brother. I really, really appreciate it.
You're welcome. And I know you're going to say something else in a minute, but
Yeah,
I have to say this, right? And this is what I say to everyone: you deserve nothing, you earn everything, and you earned it, brother. And I mean that sincerely.
yeah, I appreciate that, brother.
So where
Hey,
can they get this book at?
yeah, so it's on Amazon. I'm about to release here soon the audiobook. Finished recording that. There's some
Wow,
surprises in there from a couple of very special people in my life that
wow,
make a guest appearance. They don't know that yet,
wow.
but excited to put that out. To narrate it myself was another part of an incredible journey. And yeah, so excited to get that thing across the finish line here pretty soon. It's available on Amazon right now, and also for any listeners that might be interested in a signed copy, I'm putting out what is probably the coolest sounding discount through my website, Stalker 25.
Hoorah. Yeah.
One word. And for anybody that's interested in a signed copy, you can use that discount code for a 25% off on that. I love to put personal notes and share with folks. So if folks are interested in that, they can look on my website, elevateleadershipsolutions.com. On LinkedIn, I'll put a comment under this show
Yeah.
with all of those things. But yeah, it's currently available on Amazon. That's probably the best place for folks to get it.
Yeah, and I can't wait now for now. You're going to give me a surprise, right? It's like a Christmas all over again as I hear the audio version. And for those of you that live in areas where you find yourself stuck in traffic occasionally, I had to find the positive when so let me say this as with context. I absolutely loved my time in the organizations and the people I worked with at DIA, NSA, and Cyber Command in the DC area. But the traffic was, as Wendy says here, for the faint of heart, as she, counsels me on my reading list. But and I love Wendy. But the point is, I was stuck in traffic a long time, and I can either yell and scream and beep and honk and realize that none of that matters, or I used it to read, and that was the time I won't say I read the most, but I consumed the most wisdom through audiobooks by being in traffic. So if you're looking to get this book, or maybe you're not someone who likes to physically pick up the book, I personally am that way. I like to have it in my hand, whatnot. We're going to have the audiobook. When do you expect that the audiobook version to be out?
That's up to Audible.
Okay.
I'm going to start downloading it or uploading it actually tomorrow.
Okay.
And through their review process, from what I understand, sometimes it goes quick, sometimes it doesn't.
Okay.
My hope is for that to be out before the Christmas holidays or holiday. And so, yeah, I'll be announcing that on socials as soon as it's available.
Okay, great. Yeah, we look forward to that. Jay, it's really great to have you on here, and I really appreciate the audience and what they do, what you do, the questions, the motivation, the inspiration. The bottom line for this show, and I'm gonna continue to have this always going to be live, always going to be unedited, because again, that's how real life is and the journey that we have. But Jay, as you continue, if you have some other things to share with us, we'll have you back on at some point. I always love talking to you. I'm still working on my next guest, which will be after Thanksgiving, but prior to Christmas. So in the comment sections, ladies and gentlemen, if there's someone you think that we've got to talk to, that I've got to bring on board and ask the questions and we can learn from, put that in the comment sections as well, because I'm always looking forward to a compelling guest. And I try to balance things out, right? I've had some people that say, hey, can you put me on? But you've got to be for the audience. It can't just be because, you got a doctorate degree somewhere. It has to be for the people that listen to what I have to say in the audience that I have. So think through that, ladies and gentlemen, help me out. I'm thinking of a variety of folks here, and, we're going to continue to bank them. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for tuning in for another episode of Beyond the Resume. Jay, any closing comments, anything you want to close with before we call it a day?
No, hey, I appreciate the time, Scott. Appreciate what you're doing and continuing to pour into others through this means and all the other things that you're doing out there. Hey, for any folks that I'm not connected with, please hit me up. LinkedIn is probably the best way to reach me and stay connected. And if anybody that's on the net right now, if I can ever help you, please reach out to me. Or if you would like me to come out and spend a little bit of time with your teams, please reach out. These are the things that I love to do. And I'm here for you. Thanks again, Scott.
Yes, sir. And so we're going to take a little bit of an aloha break. God, I'm going to get his name wrong, so I'm just going to say Mr. Young. We're going to take an aloha break here soon. I want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. Hopefully you get a moment to recharge, spend some time with loved ones, and however manner you do that. I know in a couple of days I'm going to go on a nice hunting trip with some good friends and enjoy some time off myself. But again, everyone, thanks for tuning in today for Beyond the Resume with Jay France. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.